Welcome to the Life on Shuffle podcast, a collection of stories about people who have taken chances, embraced the unexpected, and discovered their true passion. Today, we are featuring Dr. Scott Kehiaian, a business owner from Granite Falls. Also in the room today, we have Alex, Luke, Jacob, Maggie, and Mr. Cooper. Dr. K is currently a business owner and teaches several business classes at the Caldwell Community College and Technical Institute. Dr. K grew up in Santa Maria, California. He received an associate's degree from Allan Hancock in Santa Maria. He got his bachelor's degree at California State University Chico. He earned his MBA at Pepperdine University Malibu California. He got his doctorate at Nova Southeastern University in Florida. Dr. K has been employed in many businesses, yet owned many businesses as well, including the following: curb painting, buy and sell businesses, financial planning, real estate development, flipping rentals, 2 self-storage facilities, Stone Creamery, and now he works at the Caldwell Community College. Welcome to the show, Dr. Scott Kehiaian.
Thank you.
So, Dr. K, when you were 10, what did you want to be when you grew up?
When I was young, I started investing at age 10. My grandfather was somewhat of a genius in investments, and so my first investment was with Superior Marketing Research. It was a penny stock, and my grandfather suggested I stay away from those, and I put about $1,000 into it, and it turned into a $10 stock. And I thought it was going to go up to 40 or 50 and dollars a share. My grandfather was begging me to sell because I would have made a horrendously large amount of money. And I said, no, it's going to go up. And about 2 months later, I learned that they stole the technology, and it went down to 0.000003 cents. I own 10 million shares today, and it's worth 0. So originally, I wanted to be an investor. But as I grew up, I learned that I just loved business. So I started a curb painting business. I had about 20 kids in junior high working for me. And I enjoyed the process of putting together a business and managing it and having to do all of the financials. And so I knew, from that point forward, I wanted to do something in business, and I didn't know exactly what it was going to be. And I started a buy and sell business that I call a junk business, and it actually turned out to be a very profitable business that I kept until 1996. And the largest sale I made was I bought 100,000 snowsuits from the U.S. military and sold it to an approved military overseas and made a $1 profit per suit. So made $100,000, and I took that money and I started investing into real estate, and that kind of brought me to where I'm at today. My wife and I, we started a real estate development company, and where we would buy raw land and develop it, and then we would also flip homes, which was a lot of fun, and started buying rentals. So that kind of started our largest business that we had over the years.
So when you were doing the curb painting business, how old were you when you were managing these kids?
I started it at age 12. And I started doing it myself, and then I learned there was way too much demand for one person, and so I got my best friend to start with me, and then we started hiring new people, and so by about 13, we had 20 kids working for us.
I can kind of relate to that. Me and Jacob, we tried to do landscaping. We tried to do mowing together. We were mowing for these ladies' houses and whatnot, and we made some money off of it, but our plan, we were thinking we were going to go big in it, but we never really got to that point where you are today, where you could take that and move on to a different company. But we never got there, but we did enjoy it.
Dr. K, so do you think where you grew up, since you grew up in California, do you think that the location helped your business thrive?
It did. It was I will tell you the business in California that we've had is 10 times easier than here in North Carolina. Just to give you an example, North Carolina has about 7 million people in the entire state, or in roughly. And where we lived, there was about 12 million in one county. So there was almost an endless amount of demand. And so it does make it easier to start a business.
So now, leading up to your curb painting business, how would you say that living in would you say that you liked living in California as a kid, growing up there, growing up around all those people, your friends? How would you describe that?
I loved it. I grew up in an area, we were outside the main hub of the people, so I kind of enjoy the country a little bit more, but we were close enough into the city where any restaurant you wanted, you can find that type of food. And the main difference is in California, there's so many businesses, you tend to get the best of each type. You get a lot of bad ones too, but you can usually find the best of each type, and so that was unique. The weather was darn near perfect. It was about 68 degrees on average where I lived, and of course you have the beach, which is 15 minutes away, and then we had mountains, which are a couple hours away. So you really had the best of all worlds at that time. I know it's changed a lot just in 20 years, but.
So when you were not doing businesses, what were you doing? Like would you play any sports? Would you go surf?
I played football, baseball, wrestling, a little bit of tennis, some golf, but football was my main sport. I was, I guess you would call a hybrid. I wasn't a jock per se, and I wasn't smart enough to be what we called nerds back then. I know that's a terrible thing to say, right? But so I was kind of in between, but I just loved football. My father was 6'3", 240. My great-grandfather was 6'6", and they were professional athletes. So I thought I was going to be as big as them, so I tried to run people over, and at my size it didn't work so well. So I learned to use my speed and run away from people, and I was pretty good at that.
So now, you talk a lot about your grandfather. Was he your biggest influence throughout your childhood and leading into your business decisions?
He was. My father was a highway patrol officer. He rode motors, and he had kind of, talking about change of careers, he got in a horrible accident, and his career in law enforcement was over much earlier than he wanted. He loved his profession. He just got a job working for Boeing as a security administrator, and he doesn't even know how he got the job because he didn't have any of the degrees, but they liked him, and he ended up catching a Russian spy at Vandenberg Air Force Base. And so from that day forward, he became a black box operator in security, and he would go to Saudi Arabia and Russia and China, and so my dad started having me spend more and more time with my grandparents to keep us safe, and my grandfather was, I don't know how to describe him other than he was a genius, and he owned businesses his entire life, and so he got me to start understanding the benefits of running your own business, and capitalism was taught to me at a young age, and so that was my biggest influence.
So your grandfather worked as a black box?
My father.
Oh, your father. And what exactly is that?
He can't really tell me a whole lot, but I can tell you he had $1 million hit on his life at one point, and so it was a bit dangerous, but he loved it. He was an expert in hand-to-hand combat, and he loved fighting. I hate fighting, don't get me wrong. But my father, he was just kind of a natural at that kind of stuff. And he's 6'3", 240 back then. He benched over 400 pounds. So when he entered the room, it kind of demanded respect. And so it was kind of fun to hear his stories that he would come home and tell me. I can't say most of them on here, but needless to say, it made me proud, and it was a lot of fun to hear.
So you talk about your junk business as well after your curb painting business. When did that kick off and take place?
Junk business took off, really took off when I was 16 years old, mostly because that's when I could drive. I started it before that, but I had to get my grandfather to take me everywhere, and he got a little tired of that, I think. But when I was 16, I got a truck. It was a beat-up old truck that it didn't even have power steering or brakes, but my first garage sale, just to give you an idea, I made over $3,000 profit, and back then that was a lot of money, especially for some of my age. And that's when I realized this could be a real business. I mean, it wasn't just something that was off the fly. And I'm sure you've heard of Storage Wars, that show. So I was going to storage auctions long before it was popular, and you'd be shocked at what you find in storage units. I mean, we would sometimes find 3 or 4 motorcycles that were worth $6,000 each, and so we would turn around and sell it at, I'd buy the unit for $200, and I'd turn around and make $20,000 off of it. Now that didn't happen every day, obviously, or I probably wouldn't be here at Caldwell Community College, right? But it did happen from time to time. And government auctions are a lot of fun to go to, too. You can find really good buys.
So I'm assuming that you made a sale and you took that money and just turned it right into whatever the next investment, or continued with that investment. But I was just curious, like, do you remember the first thing? Was it the penny stocks?
The penny stock was my first investment ever.
And you actually sold some to take and turn that into the next investment, the next venture?
No, unfortunately, when the stock went up from pennies to $10 a share, my grandfather was telling me to sell.
And you didn't sell any?
And I wouldn't sell. He even called my dad to force me to sell, and my dad says, no, it's his business. I'm going to let him do what he wants. My grandfather says, you're going to regret this one day, and 2 months later, I regretted it. So I lost everything. I put $1,000 into that. But what I did is I took the money from the curb painting business and then started buying things at garage sales.
So how did you get the initial money to start the curb painting?
My grandfather made everything for me for the curb painting, and then he took me to Ace Hardware and we bought supplies. And so the very first week he made me add up everything I earned from it, and then divided by how many curbs I did, and then that told me how much it costs to do a curb, which was $1 back then, and I was charging $3.50. And so I knew my profit margin, and then my grandfather forced me to take 50% of my profit margin and invest it. And I couldn't touch those investments until I was 18.
It's funny in a lot of these stories that we're hearing, there's and Jacob asked that question about, like, was there a family member, was there somebody in your life? And it seems that there's a lot of times, even the subtle help of a grandfather in this case, that, really hinges how somebody's life will end up, what path they take.
I had no idea, when I was that young, the only thing I cared about was football. And it was that influence of my grandfather that turned everything.
So you wanted to do like football, but did you ever see yourself becoming a big football star instead of doing businesses?
I did when I was young, because I thought I'd be as big as my dad. And I remember telling my grandfather, someday I'm going to be the middle linebacker for the Dallas Cowboys. And my grandfather said, son, if it wasn't for your lack of side speed, agility, you'd be perfect for that. So it didn't work out pretty much like he said. But I did love it.
So now you said that you started your junk business at 16, so pretty much same age we are. At our age now, we're already looking into colleges, into, the big picture of life. Were you looking into any colleges then, or were you still just focused in high school?
I was just focused on in high school. I knew I was going to go to a community college for the purpose of saving some money, number one, but number two, in all honesty, I thought a better education at our community college than I did at our state school, and instructors who really cared, and so that I think kind of brought me to teach at Caldwell, is just that experience.
So you are a very well-rounded investor. Now, were there any times when you did something and you invested in something bad, like you had any bad spending habits or anything like that?
I didn't have any bad spending habits. Probably what I had, though, was, and I hate to admit it, I had the love for money. And back then, I just thought money was the only thing that mattered for the most part, which isn't the case at all. As you grow up, you learn that. And as soon as I got married, my wife then taught me the value of not only family, but spending some money for enjoyment. And so she balanced me out. Before that, I hate to admit it, I was so cheap. I'd go to a restaurant and I'd order hot water, and I would ask for ketchup, and I put ketchup in it to make tomato soup. And then I would get ice water and with extra lemon, and I put sugar in it to make lemonade. And then I'd leave a small tip, and so that's how cheap I was, and I guess it helped me build that seed capital that you need to invest, and so in a way it was good, but again, as you grow, you get a little smarter and hopefully more mature.
So you said that there was, while at our age, there was nothing that really drove you to want to, go off to college. You more so saw the community college side of things. But what did push you to go to a bigger college, a more actual institution?
It's a good question. I asked my grandfather, what should I do? Because I was thinking of just doing businesses by myself, and you can certainly make a fortune doing that. But my grandfather said, what happens if down the road you decide you're not as good at business as you thought? I mean, what backup plan are you going to have? And he grew up during the Depression, and if you didn't have a backup plan, you didn't eat. And so he said, I think you should go to college, but pick something that's going to help you in running business. And so I decided on accounting. I knew I probably didn't want to be a CPA. I just wanted that information on how to look at financial statements and truly understand the value of it. And so that got me looking at it. Chico State had a very good accounting program, and they were rated the #1 party school in America back then by Playboy. I shouldn't say that on tape, and so that didn't hurt either. And I told my grandfather, and he said, well, their accounting program is what you should be focusing on, right?
So while you were in college, what would you say your mindset was?
My mindset was I didn't care about grades per se. What I cared about is what can I take from every class that will then relate to business. So how can I take what the instructor is trying to teach us and then relate that to running my own business with it? And I think sometimes we overvalue grades and undervalue skills, right? And skill sets and what you can learn. And so that was, to me, what was most important.
Were there any experiences during your time at Chico that really impacted who you are as a person and your professional career choice?
Yes, I took a calculus class, and I was always good at math, but I'm not good enough to be a math instructor. But I got a perfect grade in calculus, which I wasn't trying to do that. It's just something that I fit in with, and so I got to know the professor really well, and he had me start tutoring some of his other students, and so we got talking, and then he started asking about investments because he knew I invested a lot of money, and so my first job out of college really was working for Lincoln Financial, and I think his asking me questions about investments kind of directed me towards that. It was a good feeling to feel like I was improving somebody's life with some knowledge. And so I think that's why I became a financial planner to begin with.
Did your time at college seem more challenging or easier than you expected?
Easier. Yeah, I loved college. It was probably my best time of my life, and just because I went to a school where there was 3,000 residences and there was about 18,000 college kids. We got to kind of rule the town a little bit, and it made it fun. But college always seemed somewhat easy to me.
Were there any like parties and stuff that you went to? Because I know you said like it's a party school, and how did you manage between parties and your schoolwork and like?
Well, that was easy for me. I don't drink alcohol. I never liked drugs or alcohol or anything like that. But I did go to parties, and it was fun to watch. And you meet a lot of people. But in all honesty, I had a lot of fun just watching some of the things they would do. And back then, it was a lot different than it is today. They actually had a whole street they would block off by fire trucks, and you could pay $5 and get a cup, and then each house had a pool full of different drinks, and you can help yourself. That's how crazy it was compared to today. And they don't do that anymore there, of course, but it was a lot of fun. But in all seriousness, I would go out probably twice a month.
Okay,
I studied a lot.
So you said that while you're in college, people would ask you about investing because they knew that you invested a lot of money. What business, while you were in college, did you have a business other than investing that you attended to?
I sold Amway, of all things, which I wasn't planning on doing, but I lived in the dorms the first year, and I saw everyone going and shopping, and about the only thing they bought was detergent for their laundry. And so I started selling Amway to every single person in the dorms, and I went to every single dorm. And I had a heck of a business just monthly distributing Amway detergent. And so that was one way of making some extra money.
Do you think that you mentioned that, like, I would have never put two and two together on noticing that somebody is buying detergent and then like, I should sell these people detergent. So do you feel like that's something like you were just naturally have always had, or is that something like your grandfather taught you? Like, how is it that somebody in college isn't living that stereotypical college life and is trying to figure out a way to make $1?
I think it was a combination of both. I think I probably inherited those genes from my grandfather, because my mom and dad aren't like that at all. In fact, I asked my dad for a corporate bond for my birthday one year, and he said, "Who are you and what is a corporate bond?" He said, but definitely my grandfather directing me in that direction. And I tell the students in our intro class, and I think you all remember, that before you can start a business, there has to be an unmet need. There needs to be demand. And so I just looked at it and I saw, well, there's a demand, but they're all buying it at a grocery store, and it costs a lot more than the Amway product. So that was the need, and I just filled that need. And so it came naturally to me at that point. But I think a lot of it came from my grandfather, too.
So after your college career, how did your whole experience with evolving from college into just adulthood in general, how did you go about that?
I was very naive. I grew up in a household where if you told somebody you were going to do something, you would do it. every single time. And honesty, I never lied in my life that I can remember up to that point. And so when I went into business, into financial planning, I started seeing a lot of unethical things that I just had no idea existed. And that's one reason why I left financial planning is I had friends making 4 times what I made because they would sell an annuity at 12% commission to a 75-year-old woman who couldn't touch it for 15 years. I would sell them a 1% commission product that was the best, and they can get to it right away. And so I got a little bit irritated with that industry because of it. And I even noticed companies telling me to sell a certain type of product when it wasn't the best product for a person. So that was the toughest part for me, is going from college to an adult. I thought everyone grew up like me, and that just wasn't the case.
So now, you said that you sold those things to people. What was your first actual, like, you worked for somebody, worked under somebody, and got a certain amount of money per week from somebody?
Well, I worked for Lincoln Financial right out of college. They gave me a monthly stipend for the first year. And so that was my first time of actually receiving an income from somebody else and not making it my own. And that was my first time of getting full-time benefits, which, back then I didn't see the purpose of it as much as I do today. And so being self-employed is tough, and it's expensive. I'll give you an example. Because I'm disabled, and my wife's disabled, unfortunately, it costs us $1,700 a month for health insurance. And that's one reason why I'm working here. It's just because the health costs, And so that's kind of the difference between owning your own business and working for somebody else.
So how did you find this business right out of college? Like, how'd you find, man, I really want to do this? Or did you just go on like a job finding like place? Or
I did a personality exam, and selling insurance and financial planning was right at the top. We didn't have computers back then, so I did the test by hand, and it took a while to get the results. And so I thought, I love business, and this is part of business, and so that's kind of how I got involved with it. And just to tell you a funny story, the recruiter for Lincoln Financial, I can't remember his last name, but his first name was Paul, and he wore a 3-piece suit, and he came, and he was a heck of a salesperson. And he says, Scott, he says, we want you real bad. Number one, you got great grades, but number two, you have the experience. And by the way, you never have to cold call. He says, you're going to get your business because we're going to give you leads from businesses that we have. And then you'll call on it, and you'll make appointments. And he says, we have a 98% retention rate, which was really good for that industry. And so the very first day we went for training, the entire first day was cold calling. And so one guy raised his hand. He said, Paul, I thought you said we weren't going to be cold calling. That's all we've done our entire first day. And he says, life is a little different when you get to the real world. And about, I would say, 10 out of 17 guys got up and left the room. And then I raised my hand and I said, Paul, there goes your 98% retention rate. So be careful when you listen to salespeople, right?
what made you stay with him even though he kind of misled you?
I enjoyed what I was doing, and I was making good money. And then they asked me to move down to Ventura, California to head up their financial planning department down there. And that's where I started my, I was doing financial planning for them, but then I started my own financial planning business and did that for 5 years. At that point, I decided I wanted to go get my MBA. And honestly, I worked so many hours in that business, I needed a break. So I thought it'd be fun to actually go to the corporate side, and so I got my MBA and for that purpose. And I went to the corporate side and realized I didn't really like working for big companies for the most part. And so I worked for Litton Industries, a good company, a defense contractor, but they moved down to downtown LA. It was a 2-hour commute for me, and so I left that and went to work for PTI Technology. Loved it. Probably would have been there still today, but my mother-in-law in North Carolina got Alzheimer's, and my wife asked if I'd be willing to move to North Carolina to help take care of her, and so that's how we made it out here.
So whenever you first made it out here, what was your first money maker whenever you got here? Obviously, I'm assuming you still had your investments, but what business took off whenever you got here?
We lived on investments for about 8 months or so, because I moved back here just a couple months before 9/11, and I was interviewing with a consulting firm out of the Towers in New York, and they had an office in Greensboro, North Carolina, and I had 3 interviews, and I was about ready to get an acceptance letter when unfortunately 9/11 happened, and never heard from them again. About 80% of their top executives unfortunately died that day, and so I saw an ad in the newspaper for teaching financial literacy courses to people in Chapter 13 bankruptcy, and I thought I'll go do the interview because I had enough knowledge for it. I didn't know if I would like it, and so I got the job. They offered it to me, and it was my job to go to 3 different cities in North Carolina to teach all of the financial literacy courses, and I just fell in love with it. Never thought I would. I was teaching adults, but I was giving them information that they were begging for, because no one wants to go bankrupt. And when you go bankrupt one time, you don't want to do it a second time. And so I really felt like that was probably my calling. And I did that for 20 years until the pandemic happened, and they ended up shutting down the department, or I probably just would have continued with that until retirement.
So, of all of these careers that you've pursued, what is the biggest lesson you think you've learned?
Probably the biggest thing is to expect turbulence in life, and don't be afraid of it. Be proactive and realize that you can plan all you want in life, but things come up where you would least expect it. And never expected to move to North Carolina, right? But you do it for your loved ones. And I think maybe secondly is put your loved ones first. For the most part, don't put your career first, and because I think the most important thing in life is family, friends, and I believe in God. You don't have to, but I think you should have probably a belief in something bigger than yourself.
So speaking of loved ones, was your family supportive of all your career decisions?
My dad didn't like me selling financial services and insurance. He didn't think it was going to be the career for me, and I think he was right. Mostly because in his line of work, he saw the bad around the world, and he thought, my type of personality and me being naive, I think he thought that probably would be a tough career for me.
Did you have any regrets with any decisions that you had, through your whole career?
My biggest regret was when we moved to North Carolina, building too big of a home. We built, I'm embarrassed to say, an 8,900 square foot home. My wife and I, we got caught up in this dream, and it ended up being more like a nightmare. And so that's probably my only main regret.
So, what's the best advice you could give young people who are trying to figure out their careers and what paths they want to take in their own lives?
First off, I would try to figure out, do you have a passion about it, something? If you don't, find one. I don't care what it is. It could be getting up in the morning. Yeah, but find a passion and then figure out step by step, what do you have to do to go do your passion? You have to work somewhere, right? And so figure out what makes you happy. The money will usually come.
Thank you to Dr. Scott Kehiaian for joining us today. Today's episode was recorded on April 4th. This episode was produced by Maggie Helton, and it was hosted by Luke Roberts, also joined by Jacob Harmon and Alex Giles.